Welcome back to another episode of the Rankable podcast. I'm your host, Garrett Sussman of iPullRank, and I am psyched. Really important topic today. We are talking all about project management, change management, SEO, businesses. I mean, are we in a recession? We're dealing with AI. We're talking with none other than Tess Voecks. Tess is the VP of Operations at Local SEO Guide. She's the founder at her own freelance digital market consulting practice where she's helping her clients kind of get their project management in check. She's been doing it. She's a passionate operations and business development leader, focusing on people, helping agencies and businesses get efficient, organized, accountable, profitable. Thanks for joining me today, Tess. How you doing?
I am well. That was quite the introduction. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. I mean, you and I were in the same world. We're in this agency marketing world. We talk SEO. You've been doing SEO for a hot minute, but you've also been doing this project management animal. Kind of just like setting the scene, bird's eye view from your perspective. Why is project management important?
Sure. So I think a lot of what we do in the SEO world is super client focused, but I think what people forget about is like, it's a business. Like on our end, it's a business. Like anything else, we're here to make money. And how do you make money? You scale things, you make it efficient, you make it a process, a repeatable something or another that you can, for the most part, I mean, not always, because SEO is not a perfect template, right? But for the most part, you can make it a process. You can basically finesse it down to a set of steps and a time period so that you can make yourself and your team and your business profitable. And obviously, everybody loves money. So that is kind of the crux of why we need project management and why it's important. But again, it is super overlooked, super underrated, but everybody needs a project manager or at least an initial consult to help you figure out what your business needs to look like to be profitable and efficient.
It's so interesting too, because it's like I've been a part of various organizations, like not calling out any names. Some people get it really, really right, and it's this machine that's effective and productive and gets stuff done. And then others where they don't know their head from their butt, and ultimately it is a cluster. It's a disaster. It's a mess. I'm curious specifically for SEO. How do you think about project management? Like, why does it matter specifically for SEO campaigns, tasks, projects, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So I think specifically for SEO, it's important to say the typical it depends thing. So I think it's important to recognize that a lot of SEO can be a template, but a lot of it can't. So to kind of speak about the parts that can be a template and why it's important is because first of all, it makes your product and what you have super seamless. You're making a clear, consistent deliverable always. It's especially important if you're delivering to a client every month, right? Because they see it month 1, month 2, and hopefully month 30 and 40 and 52. But making sure that you're delivering the same thing, the same quality, and they know what to expect, and they also know in that on the other hand know what to not what they don't want. So that's important for your client deliverables, but internally, it's also important because your team needs to know what to deliver, what to expect, how long it's going to take them. And then at an operational level, at a business level, you need to know how long it's going to take somebody because you got bills to pay. How long is it going to take somebody? You're paying that person's salary or their wage, and how all the tools and the pieces that go in the back end. How does that all come together? To make a timely, nice deliverable for your client within a budget so that you understand what your profit margin is. So to your point, a lot of people it's a mess and they don't know. And then you don't know your profit margin. And then you get to a weird, wacky economy like this. And you're I don't even know where I'm floating or sinking or where, you don't know your head from your butt, like you said. So it is really hard, but it's also a necessary part of business. And it's better just to sometimes just rip off the Band-Aid and get right into it and figure it out versus living in denial and just being well, we'll figure it out later. So that's kind of my specialty.
I mean, that's an interesting perspective. It's how do you know from a project management standpoint, if you're coming in, whether you are working with an existing process, an existing set of processes versus starting from scratch? If you're helping a client, how do you look at that? How do you assess the type of help that they need for project management and processes across the board?
Yeah. So generally I'll ask like, if they're already just like, I don't know, like we just have to start from ground zero. Like, I mean, that's obviously a place to start, right? And then from there, we'll just prioritize like what are your high, like what do you want to be, or what are likely your highest margin or lowest margin products? Which ones are your most frequent? Those kinds of things, and we'll kind of like triage it from there. But like if you do know, like even if you do know what your margins are, I am willing to bet like a lot of money and a lot of time that you still need to refine your processes. Like, and even for somebody who has processes, like I am constantly going back through processes to be like, okay, that no longer serves us, or that no longer works, or like, oh, now there's AI, like welcome. Now, how do we work this in? Because like our environment is constantly changing. The industry we're in is constantly changing. So it'd be silly to be like, oh, this worked a year ago. This is going to work great now. Like maybe that's true. Like maybe it is, but it's likely not. And so, to your question, like how do you know? Sometimes you don't, and you just have to dive in. And even when you do know, you still have to be circling back constantly, just to make sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed.
I mean, to that point, it almost sounds like you really need your business organize, your revenue organize, your metrics organize, like understand where all that is before you even start to put things into play. Because how often would you even need to change that in the first place if you don't even know where your starting point is? So if you do an assessment, like do you ask like kind of, I guess my question is do businesses know typically? Are they organized in that way? Or do you have to like send them back to the drawing board even
Um,
there?
Usually they have a pretty good idea, like
Mhm.
they know what their clients are signed up for, how much that's
Mhm.
bringing in, the cadence of their work and their deliverable flow. What they don't usually know is like how the processes they have in place like tie into their margins. Usually they're like, we have no idea. Like sure, this thing costs $50,000 a month, but like how much of that is profit or loss? Like we don't know, because we don't know if like the process that we're using now is right, if it's too much or not enough, or like can we make it consistent so that we make a consistent profit, versus like sometimes we do it this weird wonky way and sometimes we do it this other weird wonky way, and it varies. So yeah, I kind of see a little bit of everything. Luckily at LSG it's pretty reined in.
Yeah.
So most of the processes are just like, hey, we need to add this thing or remove this thing, or hey, we need to edit what we're doing, because like I said, like AI comes along and now we're like, oh heck, how do we implement this now? Or how does this change the game? And so um I don't have a preference either way, I guess, but like I do generally like to generally like to work with businesses that kind of at least have some semblance of what they have going on, or at least know where they want to go.
Right. And I guess to that point, what do most businesses get right versus get wrong about operations specifically? Like where do you see people are typically like on the right track versus missing the mark?
Yeah. So I feel like pretty much everybody knows what they're doing as far as like a deliverable. Um so like I do a lot of like by nature, I guess, SEO companies just because of the industry
Yeah.
that we're in. But like so for instance, just like a very broad, like hypothetical situation, a lot of folks will be like, okay, we have an SEO audit that we owe somebody. Like we have a 1 million URL site that we need an SEO audit for. Okay, great. That's perfect. Like they know, and like, oh, we charge, X hundreds of $1,000s or whatever. I don't know. That's what we charge. And we have this audit that we owe them in 2 months. And it's like, oh, okay, that's great. But like what people don't get right a lot of times is like understanding that there's so many layers of that task, right? Like it's like you can't just like give somebody an audit and be like, here, do this audit in 2 months. It's more like, okay, what are the components of that audit? How long does that take each person? Like who does the QA of this? Like how do we make this like I mentioned at the beginning, like a consistent type of product that we're always delivering to folks, so that we're A, not missing a step, B, it's quality controlled, and C, it's profitable. Because you could have like an audit and spend, like 10 hours on a content audit for one person and 4 on the next one. Now, somebody could argue, well, it'll all even out in the end, but does it? Like, does anybody go back to make sure it does? Like, I don't know. Like, So that's like a great example of like, let's cap it at like 8 hours. And then if we need more, like, somebody should holler into the void at like hour 4 or 5 in that process to be like, hey, I need more, like, just so we know. And then to kind of the greater point is like, then it's a little bit easier to understand, like, okay, that's how these extra hours or this extra time or this extra person or whatever it is going to affect the profitability of this product. And if it's a common issue, then, hey, we gotta rejigger how this works a bit and build in some time or some processes to the greater product.
I mean, that's the challenge, right? Where you're like, you can't be so rigid that you can't, like it has to be flexible because not every project's going to be the same. That's just the part of it, no matter how much you productize the process. And so it's like you, as a project manager, you kind of have to be okay with that, but you also need to make sure the communication's like solid, right?
Exactly. So like I said, really building the foundation of communication with your team and being like, hey, don't tell me at hour 8 that this isn't going to be finished. Like, tell me halfway through, like, hey, there's a slight chance. And then you can kind of like run it up the flagpole, like, hey, so-and-so says, this is going to take probably 2x the time. And then that starts the process of like approvals. And like I said, understanding like if we need to shimmy shake things to meet a certain margin, or like, hey, this is a recurring problem, we have to fix this, or just like a whole myriad of problems and answers to be fixed. But it really just starts there. And I think that's what a lot of businesses as a whole, really, not just in SEO, like don't understand. It's like, it's taking big things and breaking up it into small things so that you can like greater understand how that big thing really functions and really works. Because a lot of businesses will be like, oh, that's tedious. And like, I don't want to think about it that way. It's like, yeah, but that's the reality of how you have to think about things. It's like all these little things that make the big thing.
And that's really interesting to me too, because it's like you break down these projects, but there's also that training component. Like your people need to understand how to communicate that as well. So to what extent do you bake training into your project management, operations?
Yeah. So I would say there's like a couple safeguards in place. So, like when we onboard clients, or like folks at LSG, a local SEO guide, or when I have my own, freelance thing going on, it is something that I really like reiterate to all the people on the team is like, hey, don't tell me, like, if you like smell smoke, tell me before there's a fire, so that's just something we're constantly saying. But also, things happen.
Yeah.
And that happens too. So a lot of it is being able to deal with things as they come up. But also back to like my point about like being able to take big tasks and chunk them up into small tasks is the ability to resource plan. So like if you have these fires, then we know exactly like I have to move these pieces to make this work now. Like maybe that means next week and the week after and the week after I need to like kind of shimmy shake this. But if we don't have those big chunked tasks broken into smaller chunk tasks, suddenly it becomes like, I don't even know what I need to move. Like I have no idea how to like reorg my whole entire schedule or somebody else's team's whole entire schedule to now make this work. And that's obviously a huge problem, like, because then we no longer have control of our staffing. We no longer have consistent staffing. Like it's a huge problem. So yeah.
Dude, operations is such an intense role because it's like, it feels like to me, and you can confirm or deny, but it's like, even if everything is going right and according to plan, you're still always spinning plates. Like you're still like juggling so much.
Yes. No, you're totally right. I think, and a large part of operations and project management is like risk management, right? So you're kind of like the person that's managing all the risk, and kind of trying to poke holes in things as it goes so that you can juggle like 7 plates instead of 700. So so it is one of those things. But again, that's why project management and operations is so stinking important, is because you don't even know what you're working with until you like really break it down. And then, like I said, being able to move those small pieces, to make the greater big piece work it's super important.
I mean, to your point about risk mitigation, like that is such a key part of like whether it's an individual project or just the ongoing. How much time do you invest? Like, how frequently do you revisit risk mitigation across the entire org? And this is we're going completely in a different direction when we initially
We're good.
started, but it's so interesting to me of like how you handle that as the VP of operations.
Yeah. So I think the answer is never. You never
Mhm.
stop. And I think the reason is because you build the framework like I was talking about. You take all these tasks and you break them into smaller tasks. And during that process, you're really thinking about like what could fall apart here. What are the things we need to consider for internally? What are the things we need to consider for our clients? Like the pitfalls, all the things. But then like as a on the day to day, like shit happens. So you're
Right.
constantly you're constantly like trying to be like, okay, this is the lesser of all the evils, and this is how we're going to do it. So it never stops. So, you try to do as much proactive risk management as you can so that you don't have to be so reactive to the day-to-day stuff. Again, that's why it's so important. But the day-to-day stuff happens. Like you can plan all you want. You can plan in one hand and in the other. And it's always going to come up, but you can try to minimize it by at least being proactive about project management.
Can't imagine being a perfectionist and trying to be like an operations person. I feel like that's like the worst role you could possibly be if you're like,
It, so like yes and no. Like it just depends on how you manage your personal stress. Like I would say I used to be a perfectionist, but
where
like
are you?
with every child that we have four. I've kind of like been like, I care a little less. But I also like handle stress well, I think.
Mhm.
So all those little things they kind of wear on me, but not, I don't think as heavily as it wears on other people who don't like handle stress quite as well. So I think it just depends on how you handle stress. But yeah, it is a whole thing where you do have to learn to, give and take.
Right.
Hills to
Well, I
die on and
mean,
hills not to.
it's funny because it seems like the type of profession that like attracts a perfectionist because it's all about organization and control. And then the irony is the fact that like it's one of those roles that you don't have or not that you don't have any control over, but it's likely that things are going to be to challenge your needs of organization control because that's the nature of business. I am curious, as we get to the end here, one question I did want to touch on that you and I were talking about a little bit before is the whole idea of change management.
Mhm.
And that aspect of project management and operations that sometimes you do need to like a bigger change of processes, or you need to incorporate something new like AI or different clients all over the place. Can you speak to change management and kind of how you think about it?
Yeah. So change management is super important. I think specifically, um, actually, both internally at LSG and also like in my own business as a consultant, um, change is hard, especially project management, because I feel like when it comes to operations and project management, we're so focused on hours and scope and time and money and people and resources and planning and da 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 da. Where like if you come from an org that traditionally has been like whatever, like we'll figure it out at all, like my nightmare type thing. It can feel like you're being big brothered, right? Like you have somebody that's like very looking at you, like meticulously looking at what you're doing and how you're doing it and trying to figure out processes. And it can feel very like hovery and like, yeah, big brothery. So change management is super important. I think it's one of the things that gets overlooked, but if you want to get buy-in from your team or from your client's team or whatever it is, like you really need to think about it. And I think like traditionally change management is like, oh, we're going to switch from this process to this process, and here's the documentation and blah blah blah. But I think the way I like to think about it is more like, how do we frame what we're doing to be in a positive light for our client or the team or whoever it is that you're working with, because what you're doing has obvious benefits, but those benefits aren't like, unless you really overly communicate them and give the other person the why, it's easy for the other party to be like, ooh, on the fence about what you're doing and see it as something negative. So making sure that you're really communicating with them about like what you're doing, why, how this benefits them, long run, short run, and kind of like bringing the full loop together is super important. Like the documentation, don't get me wrong, that's also important too for training purposes and whatever. But really just like getting to chat with the team, ideally one-on-one, and bring that full, like bring the loop close, I guess, if you will, is super important.
Yeah, people management is tough. And especially when you're like, you have to navigate that need to know basis and why some decisions are made. You can't always be fully transparent. And yet you need everyone on board. Having that sort of emotional like IQ, that EQ, if you will, to be able to navigate that is probably one of the harder aspects of your job.
Yeah, and it really is because like you can control a process to mostly, but you like controlling people is like, that's hard. Like you said, everybody has their own emotions, their own like notions going on, and sometimes their own agendas too. So it's really hard to make sure that you're making everybody feel like the process and the things that you're doing are, with the best of intentions, and that everybody's goal is unified. Because at the end of the day, we're all like here to work, do a good job, make some money, and go home, right? So like the less you can make people feel like you're interfering with that, the better. And so good communication, open communication is the biggest part of that, I think.
And Tess, that's so clear with you. So like if anyone is, if you're looking, because you're taking on clients right now in terms of your freelance role of kind of project management. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, like where's the best way to kind of reach out?
Yeah. So I am taking on a couple clients. I have room for like a couple spots. So yes, if you want to get in touch with me, I'm on Twitter at Tess Voecks. I'm on LinkedIn, or you can hit up my business email, which is super original, tessa.voecks at gmail.com.
Beautiful. Okay. Are you ready for some rapid fire rankings?
Yes.
Let's do it. Okay. Put on the music, some time on the clock. We're diving right in. First off, rank your top 3 of something that you love. It can be anything.
Let's see. Probably. Okay. So I'll go with, my hobbies, I guess. So I don't really have hobbies, first of all, because I have kids. So my hobbies include, spending time with my kids, like walking or hiking outdoors, either on a flat terrain in the forest, or like, I really like mountainous type things, or like decorating or reorganizing my home. That's very project managery to say, I know.
But I get it. That is really fun. We're doing it ourselves. Okay. Rank your best SEO or marketing win.
Oh my goodness. Let's see. All right. So I think my first one is creating and scaling project management, LSG. It's something I take a lot of pride in. I'm really proud of the work that I've done, but more importantly, the work that the team has done to make that successful and really make LSG the company and the product that it is today. So that's like number 1. Number 2, I would say creating my own freelancing business. It's a fun way to kind of like work with different clients outside of LSG. Also like exercise my brain and to help people. I really like helping people. So that's something I'm also very proud of. And also, probably joining Minnesota Search. Everybody should check out MN Search. But it's something that I'm really passionate about, giving back to the community, helping put on events and things like that help continuing ed of all their digital marketers. It's incredible. So I'm super thankful for the opportunity.
So much FOMO. It seems like such a great group. I always see all the great stuff between you and Epic Gleason. Okay, finally, also rank your top 3 SEO tools.
All right, so I'm going to go with SEMrush. I wouldn't be here if I wouldn't say ClickUp, hashtag project management. I do love ClickUp a lot. And no, I don't get paid to say that. I just really love the tool. And then also something that's really exciting is an LSG built tool called Squirrel. It's basically it runs in Slack. It's like an assistant. It helps do some of the dirty work for you. We have some pretty awesome tools coming out of it. And so more to come on that, but it's really changing, I think, the way that we do SEO and the information that we're able to like process and like light speed. So
that's fun. That's super fun. Okay, rank your best number one SEO trick or tactic.
All right. So I'm a big internal linking girly. I will die on that hill every day. Like, it is boring. It is not like glittery and shiny like AI or some of the other stuff going on, but it is tried and true. You will win. It's a guarantee. Just do it. Yeah, I think that's it. And then of course, project management.
Okay, you could slip that in there. Okay, finally, also rank what you love most about SEO.
What I love most about it. All right, so probably the challenges it brings. So I could never have a job that's like routine or just like the same day to day. You can make processes out of SEO, but at the end of the day, like every site is different, every client's different, and I like that about it. Building relationships. I love the network that we have in the SEO industry, specifically on SEO Twitter. I think it's great. I've met a ton of like clients, colleagues, friends, my Shine group. So shout out to them through Twitter. And I love that about it. Also, just like a robust set of skills. So something I think that's super underrated about SEO is like you will come out of it with a ton of skills because SEO is and should be integrated into every single part of marketing. So if you're an SEO, you're not just an SEO. You know something about content. You know something about link building. You know something about PPC. You know something about copywriting. You know something about project management, probably. You know a lot of the ins and outs of the business. And I don't think that could be said for every department in marketing for sure. So I think SEO has made me super well-rounded. And I appreciate that about it.
That's so true. That's so well said. Rank your best learning SEO resource.
All right. So I think the one that people always like scoff at is Twitter. Twitter / LinkedIn. I think like people are like, oh, so you have to like take a course or you like have to like read this, I don't know, publication or something, but not really. I think some of the best information and like studies that I've come across are just like Twitter threads. So that's my number one. Number two are like blogs and roundtables, like meh, of course. 3 is probably podcasts, and the 4th is just like finding a mentor or having a colleague or coworker that you feel super comfortable with, picking their brain, having somebody to rubber duck. Also super underrated. I know they tell you like in school all the time, oh, networking, it's always networking, but it really is. It really, really is. So those are my faves.
I was gonna say you mentioned rubber ducking. That's my new favorite term. I'm gonna start breaking that into casual conversation later.
Yes.
Rank the top 1 to 3 SEOs or marketers that you most like, admire, respect, look up to.
Yeah, as of late, I'd say Nick Eubanks. He is a super bright person. I admire all the hard work and all the things he's really been doing. He's a great entrepreneur. Has a really solid business mindset, and that's something I aspire to kind of like, learn over the years. So shout out to him. Also, Blake Denman, another solid dude, not just a great business person, but like ethically and emotionally, just like all around solid person. Somebody I always bounce ideas off of and kind of riff with. And then I am going to butcher her last name, and I apologize. I really admire her. I've just never heard her like say her last name, so I will butcher it. But Amanda, is it not Natividad?
Natividad?
There you go. She's with Spark Taro, and she just has like this brilliant way of like casually sharing information that's useful, and I appreciate that. She doesn't like make it overly complicated. It's nothing, and like you read it and you're just like, yeah, of course, like that makes total sense. But she just has like an elegant, casual way of being relatable. And, that's so much about marketing, is just being able to be relatable. And I really admire that about her. I think she's great.
Yeah, she's so likable. All three of those are great people. I really appreciate it. I remember interviewing Nick on a podcast I did a while back, and he was on the way to the airport the whole time, and he was still like the nicest guy, just taking time from his day, like respect to Alvin. And Blake, actually, it's funny, a joke about, or story about Blake real quick, is that they have great merch at Rickety Roo. They have these great t-shirts. Yeah. I got one for my pregnant wife at the time. It was one of her like pregnant shirts the entire time. It was this little like bear on the moon. It's great. Great team, great organization over there. Finally, last question. Rank your number one cause or charity that you'd want to promote.
Sure. So my favorite is the backpack program at our kids' I guess at our regional school or our kids' school. It helps kids fight hunger. So basically what it is like, it's like a food shelf that's at school, and they send products home with kids who need it in backpacks. And, that's super near and dear to my heart. I hope nobody ever has to experience that. And I wish no kid ever did, but that's not the reality of our world. So I really admire that program, and I love the work that they do. And I know that it's not just centralized to our school. I know that they're like, I don't want to say all schools, but like there are a ton of schools and districts and organizations that support this cause. So if you can find it in your heart to either donate or volunteer or do some sort of outreach for your local backpack program at your school, I really encourage you to do that. It's a great cause.
I love that. And we'll have a link to that in the show notes so you can find it down below. Tess, thank you so much for being my guest. This was such a fun conversation, really interesting.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm super, super excited to be able to spread the good word of project management and really bring light to something that I think is really underrated and like overlooked in our industry. I think it's kind of like the less glamorous side of SEO or of business in general. And I think people should really realize how like important it is and how much it affects your business and your team really too. So yeah, thank 100%. You for having me.
No, absolutely. Find Tess on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on the email. We'll have that in the show notes as well. Once again, my name is Garrett Sussman of iPullRank. This has been the Rankable podcast, and we will catch you next week. See you later.